Hello, I welcome you to this webinar, one that I have been truly looking forward to with great anticipation. My name is Douglas Comer, and I'm president of the United States National Committee of the International Council on Monuments and Sites, also known as USCOMOS. The title of our webinar today is Showcasing Tribal Cultural Heritage at the Grand Canyon National Park and World Heritage Site. Over the past several years, Grand Canyon has taken bold and concrete actions to emphasize the affiliation of tribal communities with the Grand Canyon. And really, affiliation is much too mild a word. It would be difficult, if not impossible, to describe the role that Grand Canyon has played in the culture of many tribes. As the philosopher Timothy Castillo has said about the Grand Canyon itself, although I paraphrase here, if you were to stand at the edge of the Grand Canyon, you might be lucky enough to experience the sublime, which Timothy capitalizes with an S. A certain kind of experience in which what we sense takes us to a place that cannot be sensed. The Grand Canyon was sacred to the tribes, literally the center of the universe to some. What has begun and is underway at Grand Canyon is an acknowledgement of this. It is, thankfully, completely aligned with the policies of Indigenous engagement that are now a big priority for the current administration in Washington. Over the next hour, you'll be hearing about the ways that this very creative engagement is being pursued. Those of you who have joined us today, I think, will remember this for a long time. And with that, I would like to introduce our moderator for today, Jan Balsam of the Grand Canyon. Thank you so much.
What we'd like to do this morning is to showcase a little bit about what we've been doing. We're going to hear from Grand Canyon National Park Superintendent Ed Keeble, who's going to present a little bit of our history as a national park and a World Heritage Site. We're going to then pivot a little bit to one of our staff, Grace Lilly, who has been working on some innovative programs with our Cultural Demonstrators program centered at Desert View, which is the east entrance to the park. We're going to move from there to one of our colleagues, Mae Franklin, who represents communities just to the east of the park, the Cameron chapter of Navajo Nation, and has also been part of our intertribal working group. Then we're going to move to our friend Jack Panyesva, who works for the Grand Canyon Trust and has been working on a number of outreach programs, coordinating with our various tribal communities and the park. And then we're going to round out with Dorothy Firecloud, who's going to provide some perspective from our national office, from our Washington office of the Park Service. So with that, I'm going to start out with Ed Keeble, who's going to do a little presentation for us. So I'm going to move to Ed right now and pull up the PowerPoint.
Great. Thank you, Jan. Thanks for that introduction. And thank you all for joining the presentation today. Grand Canyon was designated a World Heritage Site in 1979, and we in the park are very proud of that designation. For those of you who may not be familiar with the park, we're located in northern Arizona in the ancestral homeland of 11 tribes. The park is a World Heritage Site because its stunning beauty illustrates 2 billion years of geological history. We have a collection of endangered and threatened species, plant and animal, and 2 species that are unique to the Grand Canyon. Extensive cultural resources related to the indigenous people who lived in this special place from time immemorial. I want to take a few moments to share with you a video that illustrates the strong connection our tribal partners have to this land.
think the view from Desert View, you get to see sort of a panoramic. You get to see the river. You can even see the confluence just up ahead, looking north. And then when you turn towards the east, you see Navajo lands, and that's all part of Grand Canyon. It's all part of our homelands. And so you can see right there how we're part of the landscape.
The canyon has a lot of meaning, you know, a lot of significance to us. It's the place of our emergence. It's also a place where the soul returns, you know, after death. It's a place of wonder, it's a place of fear, it's a place of awe. It's not a place, I think, that people approach without a sense of awe and reverence, extreme reverence.
And if you look all around, you can feel the sacredness. All of you can feel it. There's no words to describe what you're feeling, but you can feel it in a sense. You can feel it in your being, and you know why this is sacred. So in the future, when we have visitors to Grand Canyon, we hope visitors will be able to have a greater appreciation of stories about the tribes, about the canyon, what we can bring to the narratives that are being talked about. There are sacred places that need to be managed in a specific way. There needs to be preservation, the resources of the canyon that needs to be here after many, many years from now. So that's what I hope we can bring to the whole narrative of the canyon.
NPS management policies since 2006 encourage parks to pursue an open, collaborative relationship with American Indian tribes to help manage the parks while also helping tribes to maintain their significant cultural and spiritual sites. We've not always lived up to this high calling. The United States Congress passed legislation in 1975 that encouraged the park to enter into cooperative agreements with Indian tribes for the protection and interpretation of the Grand Canyon. The park has not always taken advantage of this authority. I am leading an initiative in the park to take full advantage of these authorities and policies to change the way we work with our tribal partners. The park was established just over 100 years ago when the federal government took this land and its waters from the tribes who lived here from time immemorial, and then made it hard for them to remain connected to it. Since that time, the park has also actively and passively treated these people as strangers in their own homelands. I have a vision to address these wrongs and to treat our tribal partners as true partners in working with us to protect and interpret the Grand Canyon. I start by acknowledging our dark past honestly. I then lay out specific strategies to ensure the park is working well with our tribal partners. And I'll walk through some of what that looks like. I have 3 goals for my strategic plan. The first goal is to increase tribal presence in the management opportunities of the Grand Canyon, increasing cooperative agreements that I mentioned earlier, increase non-monetary formal engagements with our tribal partners to support Grand Canyon management needs and opportunities, increase the number of Grand Canyon employees who are members of our 11 associated tribes, and to propose new legislation to promote direct hire authority from our tribal communities. The second goal is to build respect for tribal members and beliefs into the Grand Canyon management decisions. So here the strategies include increasing access for members of the Grand Canyon associated tribes to the Grand Canyon free of charge, identifying opportunities to eliminate permit requirements or costs to Grand Canyon tribal associated members to engage in religious and cultural activities, identify opportunities to rename places in the Grand Canyon that are either offensive to our associated tribes or would otherwise demonstrate respect to them, and recognize that the tribal perspectives on management can be different from historical approaches that the Park Service has used, including traditional ecological and environmental knowledge. And the third goal is to treat Grand Canyon employees from tribes with respect, implementing regular listening sessions with NPS employees from tribes, initiating cultural awareness training as a regular part of the Grand Canyon training program, and preventing racial profiling in Grand Canyon law enforcement practices. As Doug noted at the beginning, the United States government has defined racial and social justice as a policy priority. Working with and respecting our Indigenous communities is an important part of this policy agenda at the Grand Canyon, and we're poised at the Grand Canyon to be a leader in this important effort. So thank you, and I'll turn the floor back to Jan.
Thanks, Ed. Really appreciate that. And I think it's a vision that park staff are embracing and looking forward to working on. Next, I'd like to introduce Grace Lilly. Grace is one of our park rangers working out of the Desert View portion of the park, and she has taken on additional responsibilities with our Cultural Demonstrators program. And over this past year of COVID and shutdowns, we've needed to find some innovative ways to still keep the programs in the public eye and provide outlets for the artists who have been a part of our program. So Grace, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hi. Well, thank you everyone for joining today. I'm Grace Lilly, Park Ranger and Cultural Demonstrator Program Coordinator for Grand Canyon National Park, and wanted to share just a little bit about the background of the cultural demonstration to start with today. So let me share this with you. All right, so Native peoples and their ancestors have been in this area since time immemorial. And Grand Canyon has been taking steps to better recognize Native perspectives and recognize these voices and share these voices so they can be heard. And Grand Canyon's Cultural Demonstration Program is a way to do just that. Through symbols, patterns, and designs, Native art has displayed the everyday lives, beliefs, and dreams and visions of the long-lasting traditions of the tribes. This program gives peoples and Native peoples a voice here at Grand Canyon by encouraging interactions through the public through demonstrations of traditional Native crafts and practices. This program provides the opportunity for visitors to learn more about each tribe's culture, their history, and the skills, knowledge, and efforts involved in creating each craft. Discussions and education have helped broaden the understanding of what Grand Canyon means to this people, as well as the landscape. So the program began in 2014 and continues today with the support of the Grand Canyon Conservancy. And this program has transformed Desert View into a place to celebrate, share, and learn about intertribal cultural heritage. Since the program began, the park has hosted more than 175 artists from the 11 traditionally associated tribes. And before the pandemic, this was a year-round program bringing cultural demonstrators to the park every weekend of the year and midweek during the busy summer season as well. As the pandemic hit though, we had to shift the way that the park could safely share these cultural perspectives and voices. And so the History Behind the Arts video series was developed. And this series was created to help visitors continue to explore the rich history of Native peoples, their traditional Native crafts, and how they've been influenced over time. It also has allowed our visitors to learn about those artists who carry on their traditional heritage, and it's giving them an opportunity to look at the history of the craft with a two-part series. So we're given more of a history of each craft. And then we go into a little bit more depth looking at the demonstrators through an interview so that they're able to share a bit about their cultural background, why they've chosen to continue the art, and also walk the audience through the steps and processes it requires to create their craft. And in this series, I was able to capture about 7 traditional art forms. And that includes basket weaving, pottery, textile weaving, jewelry making, katsina carving, zuni fetish carving, and painting. And with that, I just wanted to share that this video series can be viewed on the Grand Canyon National Park YouTube and park webpage. And while we're looking forward to resuming in-person demonstrations, we don't yet have a date when we'll be able to do so safely. But I was inspired to create this series by the interest that our in-person demonstration series sparks in visitors who are normally able to come visit Grand Canyon, but were stuck during lockdowns, quarantines, and isolation as the pandemic hit. So I also had reached out to our cultural demonstrators to see how they were holding up during these challenging times, and found out that they were struggling and wanted to find a way to help them to continue to share their voices, but also provide a way for them to connect with the outside world when the pandemic had shut down tourist traffic that would normally be supporting them economically. And I feel that the artisans who participated in this virtual program were impacted in so many ways. First of all, many of them were really interested in continuing to share their culture with a broader audience that could stretch all across the United States and all over the world as well. I also think this program made an impact with helping more people recognize the amazing work these artisans create and jump-started some economic opportunities for them as well. And I know the interview videos had created opportunities for the artists to actually showcase their work in a digital portfolio as they had art show applications that they were applying for. And finally, I saw that it also helped inspire their family and the next generation to help learn and carry on those traditional Native crafts. So this series was a ways to continue the program that started in 2014, and it turned out to be so much more during a time that was filled with so much uncertainty and worry. It provided a way for visitors and cultural demonstrators to connect, educate, understand, and inspire each other, even in times when we felt so isolated and alone. This video series will continue to be a source of knowledge and a way to appreciate Native artisans and culture for years to come. So I would like to share a shortened version of the 2-part series focused on jewelry and featuring Dwayne Moctima, a Hopi Laguna Pueblo metalsmith. And I hope you enjoy the series. And if you do, I hope you can share something special with a friend or family member to help spread the appreciation and understanding of ancient yet enduring cultures that carries on through generations of practicing these traditional art forms. So with that, I'm going to share this video.
Widespread trade as they were sourced from the coast in the Gulf of California. By the mid-1800s, adornments and jewelry made of glass, ceramic, or metal were introduced in trade. While Native Americans have been making jewelry since ancient times, silversmithing, however, was not introduced until the latter part of the 19th century. The Diné learned silversmithing from New Mexican Hispanos by the 1850s. Itsirisani was the first Diné accredited to making silver pieces in 1853. His students spread the scale by teaching others and even extending the craft outside of the Diné. Over the years, New techniques and styles emerge as more and more Native artists experimented with silver. By the 20th century, each tribe began to evolve their own techniques and create unique styles that incorporated Native symbols and materials. Hopi overlay, Zuni inlay, Petty point, Navajo stamping, and tufa casting are examples of different styles that have emerged in the last century. Today's contemporary work shows that artists are free to merge their own inspirations with their skills and traditions that have been passed down for generations. What traditional types of jewelry or adornments are typically worn in your family or culture?
We have the pleasure of talking with Dwayne Moctama. He's a metalsmith jeweler joining us from his home today in Glorieta in northern New Mexico.
I've been doing this since 1974. This is my 46th year of making jewelry as a profession. And I started out at the Museum of Northern Arizona in Flagstaff. Well, actually, I was a college student, but the professor retired and went to the Museum of Northern Arizona to start an art institute. And I was very fortunate that I had talent that I guess he saw, and he took me with him to the Museum of Northern Arizona. And I was an artist in residence there for a 3-year pilot program. And that's where I realized how important culture was, because many, many people came to the museum, and famous people and people who to give philanthropy. And they would call me an artist, and I was only 19 years of age. And I used to get very, very intimidated by that. I used to tell people, oh, excuse me, I'm not an artist, I'm just a craftsman. Because I felt like that word was a big, it's a big word, and you have to have credentials to back that up. And I felt I didn't at the time, because I was still a kid. I felt like I was still, didn't know anything about the world yet. But I just feel like I've accomplished so much in my lifetime. I think with what I've shared today about the natural stones, the natural materials I use, and the grateful thankfulness that I, how would you say, honor these materials, because they come from a source that is irreplaceable sometimes, and we need to really honor that and make people aware of it. And handcrafting, done by these digits. My grandfather used to say, the Creator gave us all these things to allow us to live in this world. Eyes, a brain, hands, digits to work with your fingers, your feet, your legs to carry you around. And what better way to honor the Great Spirit than to do everything by hand? I will fight for handcrafted everything, because my ancestors did it, and so can I.
So thank you for everyone for joining. I'm sorry about cutting out with the audio and hitting the mute button earlier, but if you would like to watch any more of those videos, as I mentioned, they're on the National Park Grand Canyon's YouTube page, and you can also find them on our nps.gov page as well. So with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Jan.
Thanks, Grace, and thanks for sharing that. It's been an important program and one it's been growing and will continue to grow. I'd like to introduce my friend and colleague, May Franklin. May is part of our Intertribal Working Group. You saw her on the video, and May has been a part of what we have been trying to do for the last 15 plus years in various roles, but really intensively in the last couple of years as part of our Intertribal Working Group. So May, take it away.
Thank you. Ya'at'eh from Navajo land. I'm here to talk a little bit about Grand Canyon. We call it the Road to the Rim, Da'ha'azteen. This is what we refer to, the Grand Canyon. I am of the Diné tribe, and we are neighbors to those who live and work at Da'ha'azteen. My tribe calls themselves Diné, the people, and we use the clan system also. My mother's clan is Haska'ahatzoho, Yaka strung out on a line, and born for my father's clan, Kia'ani, which is towering house clan. My family still uses the forests of Grand Canyon National Park for its natural resources. We depend on the firewood that they make available at times to the residents, and the plants and natural materials for our ceremonies and our crafts, and to access our sacred places. And then we also use the park and the concessionaires for employment resources, so we can continue to support ourselves and contracting opportunities as well. There's a story in the Park Service. As a little kid, I knew that Anasazis used to live along the river, the Little Colorado River where I live, and went to the park to learn a little bit more about these people. And I was told that they had moved to another area once they depleted their resources in that area. So right now, my tribe in our community here in Cameron, we are in a really bad drought. We're gonna have, this summer is gonna take a toll on our wild horses and our livestock and our plants and our water. And so we've got to be able to come up with something that continues to sustain us. And turning to the park and communities on the outlining of Cameron is going to be important. One of the things that I know that Grand Canyon gets is about 6 million visitors a year, and 1/4 of that comes through Cameron, Arizona, on Navajo land. Those who have worked and lived in Da'ha'azteen for years have come to appreciate the tribes who have been here since time immemorial. We thank them for advocating that we speak and share our voices again at the canyon. Desert View was the idea of Mary Coulter, a lady architect who designed the watchtower at Desert View. I think she also wanted tribal presence too. We just needed to move in. The 11 tribes that call the canyon home came up with a theme for the Desert View project. And that is, we are still here. And those words speak for us. It's a place that we will be able to share our crafts, be able to tell our stories and sing our songs and share our culture. And so we're really excited about this development. I believe we've got some funding in place, and we'll be starting to build some structures this coming summer. So we're really excited about that, and the support that from all the entities that have been been there to help us make this a reality. Cameron is located to the east of Grand Canyon National Park. And you can visit the trading post there. We have folks that continue to still weave the rugs that Navajos are famous for. We have, do I control this PowerPoint, or how do I get the next?
Forward, if you'd like me to. Just tell me which slide.
Okay, just go ahead forward then.
Oh. Oh no. It's not. You just want to keep talking. I'll figure it out.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Now I lost my train of thought, but let me see here. I am grateful that I come from a community here that still is connected to the lands that are outside. I don't think that I have ever thought that Grand Canyon was separated in my mind, and I think that's the way our ancestors, our predecessors thought also. They always were able to access it and be able to gather the plants that they needed to do their offerings. We continued to collect piñons whenever they're available. So those things are always have been readily available and access to us. And it's not the Park Service. We also have Kaibab National Forest that bumps up against Navajo Nation. You can see if you come to Cameron Trading Post, you'll see the river, the bridges that are there. The instruction on how to get to Grand Canyon from Cameron is follow the river to the west. If you follow the river to the west, then that will drain into the big Colorado River. And right there will be Desert View, the site that we're talking about today. Okay, next frame. Oh, shoot. Okay. We have a lot of plans in Cameron. We've worked a lot with our community, and we have dreams. We just need a lot of influx of monies and things like that. So we're in the mode of capacity building and moving forward in that direction. We've worked a lot with the funds that have come in. We've established some farming opportunities along the Little Colorado River. And so we're very interested in building our soils and being mindful of how we irrigate so that we continue to conserve water as we grow our foods. We also have, are interested in, I don't know if you've ever come to Cameron, but we do have a highway that goes through there. And recently they did some upgrades. And all along that highway are these lights. We're trying to have them dim the lights so that we can create and participate in the night dark sky communities. So that'll take a little effort, but I think it's doable. We continue to work with the agencies, whether it's Forest Service or the Park Service, and we want to continue to develop those interactions because we know that it'll be a positive results when it comes to providing for the economic situations of our community members. So we strive to be open, and right now, Navajo Nation is still not out of the sort of the lockdown yet. We did open the east gate to Grand Canyon, but they want to be at 75% tribal members vaccinated. We're probably at 70, so is what I heard last time. So we're looking forward to opening all of Navajo again, but it should be soon though, when we're looking forward to that. Thank you.
Sorry about some of the technical difficulties, folks. We have some broadband issues and some connectivity issues from many of the locations that we are in northern Arizona. But I think May's presentation talks about some of the futures and some of the challenges that we've all seen. And I'm going to now introduce Jack Ponyesva. Jack works with the Grand Canyon Trust. He works with Grand Canyon National Park and a lot of park partners, and a lot of really great innovative work that Jack and the team at the Trust have been doing. And I'm going to turn it over to Jack to kind of talk a little bit more about the outreach that they're working on.
Thank you, Jan. Appreciate it. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored. I feel so honored to be here talking with y'all. Yeah, so I have the privilege of working with Jan and National Park Service because I manage a program called the Intertribal Centennial Conversations Group, and I'll pull up my my presentation. Okay, so yeah, I work for the Grand Canyon Trust, and I manage a program called the Intertribal Centennial Conversations Group. It's kind of a mouthful, so we abbreviate it as ICCG. And I guess it's just great to be in an environment that, you know, I'm supporting and representing tribal communities with the help and advice of really wise and experienced tribal members who want the best for their communities. And I'll get more into it, but I just feel so honored to be a part of this time in this present, this moment of social change and awareness, and just this designation of the Grand Canyon National Park as this World Heritage Site just comes at the perfect time with all the upcoming things and the you know, great possibilities that are now on the horizon. So just really happy to be involved, and thanks for having me. So the group that I manage, so we are basically in charge of, or not in charge, we aim to increase representation and inclusion of the 11 Grand Canyon tribes within Grand Canyon National Park. So what happened was during the 100-year anniversary in 2019, there was a need to include tribal members, make tribal members more comfortable, change the environment so that there was opportunity for, you know, economic development, but also just for space to be shared and space to be had by Indigenous peoples in Grand Canyon National Park. So using the 100-year anniversary of the park, the Grand Canyon Trust, you know, thought it would be a good idea to use that as kind of a pivot point to say, okay, 100-year anniversary, let's use that as 100 years, marking 100 years of tribes being excluded from the park, so to speak. Just kind of with everything that's happened in the past and all kind of the adverse relationships between the park itself and tribal communities and these different tribes that inhabit the Grand Canyon, did inhabit the Grand Canyon before the park was there and before mining and all those other exploits. So I'm using that kind of format of, you know, past 100 years of exclusion of tribes, then how can we use the next 100 years and beyond to better the situation, include tribal, you know, influence and presence and integration, and just totally embrace the tribal communities within the park through cooperation and partnership with National Park Service and different agencies that help run the park itself. So as you can see, there's a map that we wanted to put in this slide to kind of show the just give you an idea of the past and present kind of traditional territories of the Grand Canyon and with the tribes. And so there are 11 Grand Canyon tribes that call that area their ancestral homelands. And as you can see on the bottom, I listed all the tribes out for y'all. And then also our program's vision statement is on the right-hand side, and give y'all a second to read that. But I guess kind of in the end, we were really looking to bring this integration of tribes within the park by completely listening and offering this kind of open format meeting structure for them. So what happened was in 2018, there was 8 meetings throughout the year. And we basically invited all the contacts that the trust had to community leaders and different tribal members from these 11 Grand Canyon tribes. And we were able to contact 35 to 40 community leaders and tribal members of these tribes. And so we facilitated 8 meetings in 2018 and basically had these open-ended conversations of, what is your view of the Grand Canyon National Park? What was your parents' or ancestors' view of the park? What feelings or emotions, are kind of fill you when you think of the park? Are they good? Are they bad? How do you see the park now? What's your present kind of view of it? And then what is the future view that you would like to see, and what kind of goals and objectives would you like to incorporate into this plan initiative to try to make the park a safer and more comfortable place for Indigenous peoples? So that's kind of the format of the meetings that were convened throughout 2018. As I said, there was 8 of them, so about every month and a half. And it was just amazing to be a part of. I mean, it was so emotional, and so I feel like just happy to have the conversation as well, to be kind of inciting change, or just having that first initial change being brought about. And so there was just and there was also so much to be captured through that meeting as well. So I was the note taker at that point. I wasn't quite the program manager, so I was in charge of compiling all these notes and all these details. And it was a pretty tough task, but in the end, we thought it would be best to divide all of the details and goals and kind of objectives that all these tribal members thought would be best to completely and comprehensively include, Native presence and influence, and heritage and history, education, every type of content and inclusive nature of Indigenous peoples in the park, was to break into 3 categories, because there were so many things. There were so many things that needed to be done to completely integrate Native Americans in the park and kind of put them in a space and give them kind of a seat at the table with a voice that should have been kind of, given in the beginning or alongside the whole development of the park. So there were so many details and so many things that we needed to kind of address, and we didn't want to take off the list. So we were able to break it down into 3 categories, and that was education, economic development, and stewardship. So this is the first category, education, and here is the, little kind of description or summary of the values and different things that we'd like to, or the aims of our educational component within our founding document, which happened to turn out to be 6 pages. 16 pages. So there was a lot there. And here are some of the initiatives that we focused on that first year. So I guess the following year, 2018. So 2019 is where we kind of tried to really integrate and implement these, the beginning of these goals and initiatives and different, educational components that were listed and suggested in these meetings to start implementing them at the park. So we were able to call on our partners and be invited by our partners, the National Park Service and the Grand Canyon Conservancy, to come and speak at Shrine of Ages, the auditorium. And so we were able to actually be included in the hiking guides symposium. We did the river River Guide Training Symposium. We did the Historical Society Symposium. We were able to talk to the interpretive rangers at National Park Service, and a couple other events as well. I know that we also went with the, I want to say, another type of interpretive employees. By the way, it was great. It was so awesome. I mean, we were able to bring 3 or 4 of our ICCG members to come and talk with us, and we like to try to kind of split up the group, as in bring someone from Hopi, someone from Navajo, someone from Wallapai, and Havasupai, and talk to the audiences, and just kind of spread the awareness and get the education foundation laid down, because I think first and foremost that's definitely the primary tool that is going to be the best way to kind of bring about the changes and goals that we kind of outlined in our document. And so we were able to do these educational sessions, and I think they went great. We had great feedback at the end, and I think that it was just really clarifying in a lot of ways for some of the people, because I feel like some people might not be comfortable sharing certain things about tribes, or they might just not be sure about certain things. So I think that was one of the things I really noticed was it was just creating that awareness, but also reinforcing those educational factoids or things that people might be unsure about that have to do with Native Americans or related to Native Americans and tribes in the area. And some people just point blank don't know much about tribes in the area at all. So that's kind of one thing that was really kind of eye-opening, was the level of knowledge that people had, might have had, some people in these groups, in these audiences, but also the on the other side of the spectrum, the kind of high level of knowledge people had, but also some of the things that they wanted to get clarification on or weren't sure about or just weren't comfortable sharing. So I think that, all in all, it went great. And that was it was a great first go around for that year, and for trying to, integrate our initiative, this program. And then the pandemic hit, so we weren't able to continue these, unfortunately, but we look to do so in the future. So, whoops. So, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, y'all. All right. So the next little, I'm going to try to power through some of these things because I know I'm getting short on time already. So another part of the educational initiatives is the Voice of the Grand Canyon, which was a story map that was put out, I think at the end of 2019. And so that consists of different tribal members doing interviews about their cultural significance of the Grand Canyon as it relates to their tribes and everything. If you have a chance, check that out. It's a great story. And we're also coming out with the part 2, which relates to the Little Colorado River. So that's something you'll look out for in the future. And then the curriculum development of our educational component within our program is right now we're working on a river guide curriculum. So that would just be to, help facilitate the education of river guides, so they'll be able to share more indigenous focused information on the river with their passengers. And we're trying to kind of ensure that through a number of steps and structures. And then also another curriculum that we could be working on in the future would be something like for hiking guides or different interpretive staff around the park. It would be to, give them information about, indigenous plants, indigenous plant names, medicinal uses for tribes and different things like that. And hopefully change some of the signage and just different educational assets within the park itself. So those are some of the educational things that we're working on as well. Let's see, economy is our next section. So economic development is kind of the more medium term section of our initiative, of our program. And economic development is tricky because traditional culture, native culture, doesn't really blend well with economic development, the most common form of economic development, because usually it's linked to capitalism. And so when you have this native culture that's basically, views the land as one connected web of organisms and plants and animals and spirits, and then you have economic development where it's kind of profits over everything, usually is also involving degradation of the environment and things. They just don't mix at all. So this one was kind of tricky. we're really trying to kind of come up with a new native business model, and that would be to to really keep the integrity of the traditions intact, while trying to gain a better and more equitable piece of the Grand Canyon economy, or just try to start some kind of business or whatever your idea is for economic stability and mobility, because people do have to support their families and communities and everything. So that's a little bit about that kind of deep stuff, kind of hard to get into at, with a short time. And so I'll just kind of buzz through this real quick. So one of the things that we were working on before the pandemic as well was Emergence Economic Summit. And that was going to be in Grand Canyon National Park. And it was going to be basically 4 days and 3 nights at Albright Training Center. And it was going to be for around 100 attendees. And it was supposed to take place in June 2020. But the pandemic came out of nowhere with full force, and we had to cancel it. But that's fine. We're really getting back on the horse. We're really getting our partners back together. We were able for that time, we were able to partner with Grand Canyon National Park Service, Grand Canyon Conservancy, a advisory group called OCO out of Texas, and then AENTA, which is the American Indian Native Alaska Tourism Association. So very strong partners, really supportive, really great people to pair with, and really excited to get this going. And kind of we're shooting for summer 2022. So that's kind of something to keep an eye out for as well. And, along with this is going to be, some of the things that we're trying to keep an eye on in the future and implement as well. Some of those economic objectives would be, working with the river guides to river guiding community, create internships, because we are making a curriculum for river guides, like I mentioned. So that would be kind of the next step, would be, creating internship opportunities for Native youth, or, anybody in the tribal communities that would want to, act as that interpretive guide, to be able to kind of firsthand give passengers that Indigenous perspective and education throughout the river. So that's one of the things that we're really striving for, and kind of goes hand in hand with our educational curriculum. And then as well as, just trying to work with NPS and Grand Canyon National Park to better the hiring process and make it so that there's more diversity and, equality, and just more chances for people who might not know everyone that you need to know to get to the higher up places, that would be able to kind of have a fair and level playing field. So those are some of the things that we're working on as well. And then stewardship is the last component, and basically it's the long-term goal. And it would be to be stewards of the land and to help manage the land through traditional practices and different things like that. It's definitely something that we need to put more thought into, and we're definitely putting on the back burner, because this overall program was developed as a grassroots program, because we wanted a community basis solely, because when we go government to government, especially with tribal governments, it's really hard to sometimes reach the community and their wants. It's sometimes supplemented with the tribes and their wants and the tribal government, and there is usually a disconnect between the community and the government itself of these tribes. So we really wanted to be community oriented, and this would be more government to government. But some really quick examples, and then I'll wrap it up, are the Grand Canyon Centennial Protection Act, which was introduced in 2019. And basically it was to replace Obama's moratorium on the 1 million acres of Grand Canyon land to prohibit uranium mining. So that got reintroduced to the Congress this year, and I'm not sure exactly where it is. I'm pretty sure it passed the House and it needs to go in the Senate. But that's one of the things that we were able to do, with Grijalva and O'Halloran, and really proud of that, and really hope to kind of keep that in mind, and have that be sort of the goal for the future for a lot of these things when we do go ahead and kind of start the stewardship component of our initiative. And then also another thing in our sites would be permanently protecting the confluence of the Little Colorado River and the Colorado River, which is, definitely something sacred to a lot of tribes and something that deserves protection. So that sums it up for my presentation. Thank you all. I know I probably went over a little time, and I apologize for that thoroughly, but there's just so much here. And so if you'd like to contact me or Serena, which is my boss, here are emails, or you could just get in touch on the chat, and I'd be happy to send some contact information over Yellow's way. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jack. Appreciate that, and so much good work going on. It's hard to put it all into a quick presentation. So Dorothy, I'm going to ask you if you would like to be able to come on board and kind of wrap us up with perspectives that you've got from a national perspective.
Okay, thank you. Let me get this all started here. Let's see. Okay.
And I think, Jack, you need to stop sharing your screen.
Yeah, there we go.
But of course, thank you.
Okay, all right. Hello, it's my honor to be with you today. Again, my name is Dorothy Firecloud, and I'm a member of the Sichangu Lakota who live in the state of South Dakota. As you can see from this presentation, this is an exciting time for Indigenous peoples in the National Park Service. As the nation's storytellers, we, the National Park Service Rangers, have a huge responsibility. Native people feel invisible in this country, and this is due in large part to the historical narratives being erased of the many stories which are relevant to them. It is my desire that we play a positive factor in changing this narrative and that Native people will no longer be invisible. As you can see, Superintendent Keeble and his staff have taken some huge steps forward in making the relationships with tribes something to be extremely proud of, and for the rest of the National Park Service to step up to. I saw the question from John Putnam about whether other National Park Service sites have developed similar programs to what Grand Canyon has done. And Grand Canyon is truly the leader in this movement. And we hope when other parks see what is happening here, that they will also develop similar tribal interpretive areas. My position, which reports directly to the National Park Service Director, will be critical to assisting the National Park Service understand how important our relationships with Indian tribes and Indian people are. And it makes my job much easier when we have one of our icon parks, which is also a World Heritage Site, taking the steps that Grand Canyon is doing. Yellowstone National Park, with Superintendent Cam Shawley and his staff, are beginning a journey similar to what Grand Canyon is going through. But they are preparing for the 150th commemoration of becoming a national park. Much of their history is similar to Grand Canyon, and Superintendent Shawley and his staff held their first meeting with almost 30 affiliated tribes a couple of weeks ago to ensure that the commemoration tells the story of the Yellowstone landscape as it was prior to the park's existence. They won't be able to tell these stories without including and hearing from the tribes. They are working to update their website to include those tribal stories, and we need the tribes to help us tell those stories. Tribal history is largely oral, and without tribal elders' assistance in this process, we cannot succeed. We acknowledge that tribal people occupied these places since time immemorial and were removed from their ancestral homelands in order to make way for national parks. They were removed from their sacred sites, their emergence sites, sites which helped them heal when sick, and sites which were critical to their sustenance and maintenance of their lifeways. We, as the National Park Service, are truly listening to what tribal people have to say. We will tell the stories that are critical to begin the healing process of the past 250 plus years. The federal government as a whole is getting ready to commemorate the 250th signing of the Declaration of Independence. We will host listening sessions with tribes to gather their views and comments on how they would like to be involved, how they wish their story to be told. It will be a difficult story at best for tribal people to share, as the history has not been positive. We have what have been tribal people's experiences in the ideal of, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The Declaration of Independence holds an entirely different story from the perspective of Native American people. And we must acknowledge that it is time to begin, that it began a time of attempted erasure of Indigenous people, and we must seize this moment as a catalyst to transform our agency into one that lives into its promise of presenting our history in a truly inclusive manner. As part of this commemoration, we, the National Park Service, will acknowledge the many instances of violence, displacement, forced migration, settlement, and recognize the harm that has been caused to Native peoples. We have a new executive order which calls for racial and social justice and a more inclusive country. We must remember that what we are doing today will impact the next 7 generations. I am proud to be a part of this transformation, and we can't do it without the help of tribal representatives and tribal people. So I urge all tribal people to step up and help us through this change. Many times I have heard stories from tribal people of how uncomfortable and unwelcome they felt when having to explain their purpose to park rangers for visiting the sites that required entrance fees. And as Superintendent Keeble mentioned, the Grand Canyon wants to make sure that that's not an issue at their front gates. Several times I had gone into parks myself for ceremonial purposes and experienced the same type of unwelcoming interactions. And it is time for tribal people to feel welcomed. It is my vision to make a difference in how tribal people and National Park Service work together. A time of positive, sustained change is beginning, and I thank Superintendent Keeble and his staff for taking this huge step forward in making tribal people not only feel welcome back to their ancestral homelands, but to become an integral part of that success. And so I shortened this up because I know we had kind of gone over time. So with that, I thank Superintendent Keeble and his staff again, and ICOMAS and their staff for having this awesome webinar. Thank you.
Thanks, Dorothy, and I appreciate everybody's participation today. I mean, we're talking generational change now. We're talking about shifting the dynamics, and we're doing a lot of things now that it'll take time. And we just saw a comment from one of our staff reminding folks that we actually are hosting Native American Heritage Days on the North Rim again this summer. So if you happen to be in the area in the North Rim, there will be activities happening there. We're hoping to get demonstrators back out to Desert View. It really depends on our own programming and also the comfort level for our tribal communities to be able to participate again. And I'm gonna turn back to Doug to see, I know that we're over time, if there are any times for any questions that you want any of us to answer.
Yes, are we taking questions then? Do we have questions?
There are a few questions here in the Q&A box. Jan, if you want to look through them, maybe you would have a better idea of which ones are worth answering in our short amount of time that we have left.
Let's see. How many tribes were evicted from the park at inception? The Havasupai people still had a community living within Grand Canyon National Park when the park was established. They are our closest tribal community. We actually have a small community of Havasupai living within Grand Canyon National Park, within the village. We have 11 traditionally associated tribes that we work with on a routine basis. So hopefully that answered the question. The next one, let's see. Percentage of indigenous peoples employed in the park. Originally there's,
If we don't have time,
yeah,
perhaps we could get back in writing with some of these.
Sure, we're going to send up a follow-up email, and we can include some of these answers as well as some future reading, if anyone's interested. So, Doug, I'll give it to you and you can wrap us up.
Okay, thanks so much. Thanks so much. So I'd like to thank all of those who shared their thoughts and their knowledge and demonstrated their dedication with you today. I'd like to thank all of you who joined us. There's so much that I took away. For example, the words that we heard from one of the artists. What a great way to honor the Great Spirit by doing everything by hand. How interesting it is that the material culture he creates mirrors the beauty of the Grand Canyon. What have we lost and what more will we lose if we do not think hard about how this might apply to every aspect of our lives? This webinar will be available next week, and a link will be on the US ICOMOS website. And as we just mentioned, we'll answer the questions we didn't have time to address just now. Our next webinar will be on the San Antonio missions, which has developed many wonderful programs and means of outreach since being designated a World Heritage Site. They've done some very great work. Registration for the San Antonio webinar and links to previous webinars and segments from them are on our US ICOMOS website. You're welcome to visit there often. We also have postings on ICOMOS events from all over the world. Finally, while you are at our website, I really encourage you to become a member of US ICOMOS to continue and expand our work. We do need your support, not just for membership dues, although those are important, but also through participation in many working groups that we're forming now, dealing with the issues that we discussed today. So if you become a member, there will be work that you can contribute to these issues that we've discussed today and similar issues. So I really encourage you to consider that. Until we meet again, stay well, and let's stay in touch and let's work together. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend coming up. It's a long one. Thank you.